Johnny Fontana, Real World INFJ, back with another video.
Now, we drive at human nature stuff, so everybody's got the same basic wiring.
Okay.
The world kind of splits into three types.
My guest today is Chris Voss, the former FBI lead international kidnapping negotiator.
We've seen it enough, we've tested it enough that we're pretty satisfied with that. Right. The caveman response to threat was if the caveman saw something he didn't know what it was, he's either going to fight it, he's going to run from it, he's going to try to make friends with it. Those were the three cavemen that survived.
Okay.
That's how our emotions are wired.
Now, three types of INFJs. First type, which we discussed it before, the spiritual type. The spiritual type is more NI, introverted intuition, FE, extroverted feeling.
Most of the time, INFJs are going to be drawn to the sort of mystical, shamanistic side of things, or the artistic, or things of the more like emotional, humanitarian nature.
So for them, they have very vivid dreams. They really understand themselves, okay? They go out, they do retreats, okay, for like months at a time. They isolate themselves. They really are within themselves. They think. They have this ability to like really, they're sort of shamanistic, have this ability to really understand, the human mind and like, the realities of it. So I'm going to give you an example of like an INFP. Okay, sorry, a spiritual type. Okay, here's an example.
If you are capable of causing depression to yourself, I'm saying this not without any concern for your illness or not due to lack of compassion, because that is the nature of what's happening to you. If you are causing depression to yourself, you are able to generate substantial amount of intense emotions and thoughts, but in the wrong direction. If you don't have very strong emotions, very intense thoughts about something, you cannot get depressed. It is just that you are generating thoughts and emotion which work against you, not for you. No, I'm like this because my father abused me when I was 7 years of age. If you know all that bullshit, you can as well turn yourself around, isn't it?
So you notice, okay, that person is like totally like, what do you call it again, like just neutral. It's like, listen, all that stuff is in your mind and has nothing to do with what have you. Common person would be like, oh, what are you talking about? Like, this is crazy for you to think like. So for them, they're just like, no, like pain, that's all in your mind, that has nothing to do with it. Like they're so, they go so far into that. Whereas now you have the intellectual, the T-type heavy, okay?
Government, most are not fighters. Heads of government, most of them are make friends or flight. Analysts, very analytical. They see conflict as something to be avoided.
Even our leaders.
Most government leaders are avoiders.
They got there by compromise. They're thinking about their career, their image, long-term things.
Right.
Okay, so it's already rare that we got a president that's the aggressive one.
That's an aggressive, yeah.
I've done more research on these two types, okay, of the generally speaking, okay, of the intellectuals. You have the book, okay, TI, the scientists, intellectuals, and they're more into the cognitive functions. Okay, so let me give you an example of what I mean by that.
Introverted intuition just enables the INFJ to pick up a huge amount of subtleties in its environment.
For TEFI, you have the external world, but then the impetus to action, and therefore the center of desire, the center of ethics, the way that the world is and what you want to do. And so there's this reciprocity as the...
It hurts my head, all these facts and figures.
What are you talking about? You're 4 credits shy of being an MBA.
Okay, so when it comes to sciences and like engineering, it's like their mind, the way they think, it's like boom. You can tell a lot of the older generation of OBGYNs, doctors, so forth and so on, They lack, you see, they lack a lot of empathy, right? They're very boom, boom, next. They don't want to smile with you. Very just like.
Well, that's a great question. I think instead of a magic pill, what I have is a hypothesis that people won't like. I think it sounds like you and I are in agreement about what's going on. But here's the hypothesis. There's something about the academy and the skills and traits that cause a person to end up as a professor that selects for characteristics which make you vulnerable to bullies. But there's another aspect too. I think it is true that the academy is too narrow, and we ought to create academics who are broader in their thinking and their approach to life. But it is also true that for existing academics, it needs to be made clear that hiding under your desk does not work.
So now you have the other type, okay, which is intellectual as well. However, they did a little bit more socializing. So you have someone like this.
The vast majority of people that I actually work with are not at all chronic philanderers. They often are people who have actually been faithful for decades. But one day, they cross a line that they never thought they would cross, and at the risk of losing everything. Priya's affair is about the adolescence that she never had. And her story highlights for me that when we seek the gaze of another, it isn't always our partner that we are turning away from, but the person that we have ourselves become. And it isn't so much that we're looking for another person, as much as we are looking for another self. And it has led me to think that perhaps these questions are the ones that propel people to cross the line, and that some affairs are an attempt to beat back deadness and an antidote to death.
So this person, okay, is intrigued because now it's like, whoa, I hear this, but it doesn't make sense here. So let me go on, let me do some interview and let me do some research, okay, on a social level, and then I'll come back and then I can, continue theorizing and formulating my theories, okay, based on the amount of social interaction.
Pisces, yeah, what does that tell? I mean, if you believe it in so much, what does it tell me about you?
Pisces is probably the ultimate in duality, the ancients.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you have two fish swimming in opposite directions.
Yeah, so for every...
Right. Because people can say, you're such a nice person, and the next person says you're the worst, most horrible person I've ever met. And there's truth in both of it.
Yeah.
And you don't really have a conflict with it because you are both those
and you
things.
recognize both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What else about Pisces?
Very moody. Tend to be pretty lazy.
You have that pregnant pause between routines. And that pregnant pause is also known as an awkward pause. It's awkward for me, right? There should be no awkwardness. That's the only time you would purposefully put in awkward pauses. Like an awkward pause to me is a pregnant pause. It's something that I will install into my set purposefully when I know she is quite likely interested in me. She's, okay, it seems to be on now, right? So I will purposefully shut up and wait for her to re-engage me, as opposed to keep things going. I need her to chase me. I need her to re-engage me. So oftentimes I will just shut up and wait for her to re-engage. That is on purpose. But I'm more concerned about not having those pregnant pauses that are just awkward by accident and they can wreck and tank your set.
Now, you have someone like me, very SE driven. Now, a lot of this also depends on what you've been exposed to, who you've been exposed to growing up, okay?
What most about your childhood shaped you think?
Isolation. I felt very, very isolated. And my whole adulthood has been about not being isolated.
When we first would go to New York or Los Angeles or London, we would get treated a certain way, and it was really confusing to us because we grew up very working class. So hard work that was just what you did. It was like work or die. So we would go to like a place like New York, and it's like, you guys are too into this. And be like we would get castigated for working too hard.
Caring. What the fuck?
You know, I'm thinking
I hear exactly what you're saying.
And I'm thinking,
it's too heady.
Yeah, you guys care too much. And I'm thinking, get the fuck out of my way. You know what I mean? Like, do you know what I'm coming from? Do you know what I want to escape from? And most of the people who criticize people like us for being who we are or what we represent had better backgrounds than we have. We didn't necessarily go to the nice school. We didn't get to read the cool newspaper. For me, bands like yours told me there's this other world that is more closely aligned with the experience that you're having than the one that you're being told about.
You know how the modern idea is you're supposed to accept yourself. I think that's an insane idea, by the way. Really, I can't think of a more nihilistic idea than that you're already okay. It's like, no, you're not. And the reason you're not is because you could be way more than you are. And so what do you want to be? You want to be okay as you are? Or do you want to strive towards what's better?
So because this generation and the past couple generations have rewarded that imitation, it's a quickening to where it's like art imitates life, life imitates art, to where you can't separate anymore. And then the journalist can't separate, and the audience doesn't separate. Well, if you're on the sidelines and you're watching it happen, the path of independence, it's just who am I? I'm an individual. I'm going to have to forge my own path, which Nicole and Jeff and Mike all did long before they met me. It's too hard. It's actually easier just to get in the train and just ride like everybody else. Now you take somebody like me, right, who's a freak by nature, you know what I mean? I'm just different, right? You take me and you put me in a system like that, what am I supposed to do? Right? Because to be myself is to actually be counter to a system that's rewarding. When I kind of try to like lean it a little bit, like, well, I'll just try to get along, my audience goes, we don't like you like that. If I go too far over here, they're like, oh, that's too weird, dude. Right in the cage, dude.
Yeah. The field operative, RTI, is back. So we're not as FE, as the spiritual types, okay? Yeah, we have the feelings, the empathy, okay? We know when to call it quits, okay? So if I'm arguing with someone, or if I say something terrible, if I black out and I say something to my wife, and I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that, you know, and then because I know she's hurting, so I'll be the first person to say, I'm sorry, babe, you know, I should have said that, what have you, because I can feel the pain. It's hurt, like especially if, you know, we normally don't go to bed at night angry, because I make sure I don't, because if I say something, I want to make sure that, hey, listen, we're good, because I don't like waking up all tense and all that stuff. I just really don't like it. But at the same time, it's like we can be aggressive, okay? But not as FE as these types, okay? They're very just neutral. They won't argue. They'll be like, okay, this, you know, very just boom. So, but for us though, because of our nature, we sort of tend to want to sort of like take things on, okay?
I would argue that I'm an asymmetrical thinker to begin with. So if you knew how I really thought, which I've rarely revealed, and hopefully my book would reveal more of my thinking process, I think you will be surprised that I'm just an asymmetrical thinker. I just was born that way. I play nice in public these days, but I mean, I don't look at the world the same. My father was that way. My family's that way. We're just genetically predisposed to distrust. And so we tend to question. Maybe it's also, you know, some sort of gypsy root in there, but we have an intuitive quality. And so I think, if there's any message in our family, it's like, you know, you guys kind of don't belong. Why are you so weird? You know what I mean? I mean, it's worked in this business to a point, but even that it's hurt more so. Like, why don't you kind of get along? Even when you kind of join the rock and roll, you know, the rock star club, it's like, why don't you just kind of get along? Like, why are you going to shut your mouth? Like, why you got to say stuff? You know, I kind of get that vibe sometimes, even from other rock stars. It's like, I don't want to be in a fucking club. I don't give a shit. You know what I mean?
Okay, so for me, growing up, I grew up around a lot of Caribbeans. Okay, a lot of that. So I take on a lot, especially when there's a mimicking feature you take on a whole lot of that. You're exposed to all of that stuff, okay? So my type is prone to indulging, okay? Now, I'm not going to go out like the ESTPs and all these types, or the ESTJs, and jump out buildings because I need that thrill. But I will engage in certain behavior that the FE heavy types may not, or these types may not. I'll engage in this, I'll engage in that, because I want that immediate thrill. I may, drink, right?
For me, self-confidence comes because I didn't have it. And I think anytime you meet somebody like yourself or myself who might now appear self-confident, it's because I really had to find tools and resources because I was so insecure and shy and introverted. So I had to find techniques and resources to build that up in me. The secret key is to be able to shift that identity. 90, 100, 120. So some of the ways, strategies to do that are very simple. One is let's just say financially, you're a 200 degreer and I'm an 80 degreer. If I'm in your proximity over and over and over and over again, you will heat my identity up somewhere in between mine and yours to 150 degrees. Same in fitness, same in everything. So the more you can layer in multiple people, the stronger and stronger that force is. So that changes our thermostat through association. It's a huge, 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 huge thing. People say you are who the 5 people you hang around. This is why. They adjust your thermostat.
However, because of my upbringing, growing up in a traditional Caribbean household, they imposed a lot of moral standards on me. So therefore, I will engage, but my moral meter will say, don't go so far. Yeah, like you do this, but don't, go out and steal. And, my moral compass is, it's sort of, it helps me. But at the same time, I can involve and indulge, right? But a lot of it is for self-gratification. It has nothing to do with everyone else. It's just for me. So if I'm around, it's basically when I was in the military, okay? You were in Thailand, the military, the Marines, they, it's like, oh, you're the Marines, you did this, you did that. Again, you're in that environment, you mimic, you indulge, right? And all the activities that happen in Thailand, in the forbidden cities, right? But to a certain extent, you don't go all out. You just do it. Also, I'm very private about my actions. So I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I don't broadcast it. Everything is, okay, within myself.
And I'm very grateful to my upbringing in my neighborhood because it was there that I think a lot of things were learned and formed because I had a lot of bonds and friends and we grouped together. And they were all such a variety. It was a multicultural place. It was a lower middle class, but it was a melting pot of all different nationalities. I think that I grew up with that sense of other worlds besides my own.
But also with that, because we like these experiences, okay, we learn a lot. We learn. However, upon learning for the first time, it's like, I don't get it because I don't understand the big picture because a lot of things are very SI and very TI, okay? So it's like, I don't get it. I need to see the big picture first. So then therefore you have to be exposed. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, that's why when I was in the military, I had a hard time because everyone was just so like, they matured so quickly and they got things, okay? Because again, military is very SITI driven or SITE driven, okay, sort of law enforcement as well when I became a detective after the military. So you basically have to deal with a lot of these things, but for me, I was just not technical. I wasn't technical proficient because my family I come from a long line of diplomats, okay, business, okay, not ingenuity, okay, so we don't have too many engineers, we don't have too many mechanics, we don't have too many people who are good with their hands, okay, so a lot of diplomats. That's why my father speaks 5 languages. My aunt, she speaks also 6 languages as well. So we have a lot of these type of people, okay, my family. So I grew up, and then I went on to live in different countries, and I moved on, and what have you. So now with these experiences now, I developed different personalities.
It disconcerted others too, didn't it? Because you did have a reputation at one time for being somewhat reclusive, somewhat unapproachable, not easy to get on with.
Yeah. Well, that came mainly because I had I took a posture early on in my career that it was the acting and doing the parts that I was going to sort of speak to that, and that I felt that an actor animated, and if we know too much about an actor, that somehow it takes away from how we will accept the character they're playing. Now, this was an idea I had, and it was a significant idea to me. I don't really believe that as much anymore, although I think there's a certain extent. I think too much exposure, there's a tendency to become concerned with the personality rather than what the actor's doing.
Right. Because people latch onto these personalities I've created, which of course are ancillary to my real personality.
Right.
But they don't necessarily want to give me credit that I'm a sort of controller of the forces at play. So if I say something dumb, people assume that I'm dumb. It's hard for them to assume that I'm saying something dumb on purpose because I want a reaction.
Right. Yeah.
So because I know, I understand the diplomat, I understand, the very volatile person, I can now react and be on par with that personality. I can be on par with you working in DC, working in the White House. I can be on par with that, being a mechanic in the military, I could, be on par with those type of individuals who are good with their hands, who love outdoor activities and so forth and so on. But at the same time, I can also have that reserved approach where someone needs my attention and they're not as, outgoing. I can, have patience with them and be able to talk with them. So it's like you don't know who I am, because at a party, I'm very quiet. I like to have my simple conversations. And when someone else comes in, it's like, no, go away. I'm trying to have this singular conversation with this individual here, and so people are like, wow, why are you so quiet? Like, I thought you were, and so at meetings, a lot of the times people say, hey, okay, does anyone have anything? And that one INFP will ask me, he's like, I know Johnny's got something, because they know I got the bigger picture and I see things that a lot of people don't. That's why when I send my emails, I have to send out the bigger picture and then I drill out the details, because if I don't do that, everyone comes back to me and says, hey, what about this? What about that? It's like, well, because you were so, I don't want to know that or the fluff, I just want the details. I had to now give you all the big picture, okay? Because I know you're going to come back and ask me for more information. So, but there is a, what do I call that again? There are negatives to be in this type. It's because of the fact that it's like we take on these energies, okay? We're able to sort of whatever, so we're like jacks of all trades. That's the problem. We're jacks of all trades and we're masters at none. You know what I'm saying to you? And I'm also a protector. So that's why when online I get so volatile when you have INFPs. They come in and like they know the INFJ section is hurting, and you'll see my video. I have a video on that, and you'll probably be, man, this guy's out of character. It's different than what he is right now.
And some jerk comes along and tries to tell you who you are, and you know that that person's full of shit. It's not purity. It's like some other weird thing. It's like they're using your heart, for lack of a better word, kind of against you. And you're just a toy in their world. You're just this year's flavor, and next year there'll be a different flavor. We saw through all that, and our reaction, for better or for worse, was to go at it. Where other people learn to be quiet, say the right things in interviews, do the thumbs up, we were like, F you.
And now I'm explaining to you why I blew up like that. Is because it's like I read it and I can feel the energies and I can feel people are hurting.
If you see two different interactions happening, you should get a feel emotionally for what's going on. And say in one interaction, like something we talk about a lot is giving value versus taking value. If you see an interaction where it's like taking value, you'll get a certain feel for it. If it's giving value, you get another feel for it. And I showed, footage of, say, me interacting with all these people, and I'm like, here's the difference. And more guys couldn't see the difference. They would need a logical explanation, but they couldn't feel the difference.
And sometimes I get to the point where I'm like, okay, why is this only? Because when I get mad at the people who are hurting, it's not that I'm mad at you, I'm just mad at the fact that there is no other place for others who may be not hurting but want to learn. So like an INFJ like me, I want to learn from other INFJs who have been in the system, who are more mature, who are more experienced, who understand social dynamics, who are very experts at, yeah, this person's like that person's like this is what you do, boom, 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 like really can be like, oh man, like, like a Jordan Peterson, right? I want to learn from that, but you don't really have those individuals online. So sometimes I get mad and I get frustrated, but it's not really against them. And then sometimes I can come across like really tough. So, forget what I was going to say. But yeah, so, okay. So when I go on these lines, I get so upset at like the INFP. Well, it's like without even thought. Okay, because again, I got to give you context.
That would not be appropriate to this context. Okay? And what does that communicate about that person? Not to diss that person and not to scare you from asking any questions. But what does it communicate? That person can't see outside of himself. He can't grasp, okay, here's the dynamic of the group, here's the environment, here's the context, this is what's going on. It just communicates that he has no social intelligence, no social intuition.
I think dwelling is the wrong strategy.
It's focusing on the wrong things, right? You gotta focus.
Let me tell you who's willing to listen to you to complain. The people that are willing to listen to you complain and dwell consistently only look two parts. They're your most inner family and they love you to the ends of the earth, or their fellow loser friends.
So, again, I'm giving you more examples about myself because I'm not the TE types, the TI heavy types, and I'm not the spiritual types. So this is why as well, because of this, because I can read a room when I'm like here and I feel all these energies to the point where I actually left MBTI at one point because I can't deal with all this everyone is just hurting. It was just affecting me. Now you have an INFP who throws in a video and says, oh, this is what an unhealthy INFJ looks like. And it's like, bro, like, do you understand? Like, when you're in a volatile situation, you got to be aware of your surroundings. You just don't throw it in there like that. Like, you have to be accountable. You got to be aware. You can't just throw this stuff. And you don't understand by doing that, people are going to be like, oh, yeah, because then now it's like, oh, you relate, I relate. That's what I've been doing. You're spot on. And then now there's no movement, there's no progression because they'd rather sit there and relate to someone who understands their pain, and therefore the progress, okay, the change is never made. And when you look at that person's of YouTube stats, everything INFJ has the thousands, everything else is the 400s, whatever. And I'm not trying to say anything about his numbers or anything like that. I'm just saying that why is it that INFJs that represent unhealthy INFJ, this, unhealthy this, whatever, has the most views? Okay, you got to understand that. Like, there's a negative effect to just throwing it out there like that. You have to have accountability. So when I make my next video, you're going to be like, yo, this dude's really protected. Like, it's not about me. Yeah. So that's who I am, bro. And like, even when you try to like say, oh, I'm an ISFJ or whatever like that, I really don't care because I know the deal. And even if I was an ISFJ, okay, now I'm going to toot my horn here. You're a special snowflake, you're a unicorn, what are you doing? What are you doing with that unicorn?
But I just want to remind everybody that I didn't make a video to the world about anything about business until I was 35 years old, after I worked every single day from the time I was 22 and in reality 14. And then I started talking. There's a whole lot of talking going on. How about more action? How about more execution? How about more paying prices for what your mouth is saying? That is what I hope you do. Thank you.
Who else is doing what I do? And this is not just toot my horn. You have James Blake. Okay, fine. He's on that level. He's on his level. You have other folks like Michael, whatever, Pierce. He's on his level. But who do you have who does what I do here and provides you all of this content like this? I'm not looking for subscribers because I know that most people don't relate to what I say because they'd rather relate to the intellectual stuff or to this stuff. But me, it's like, no, like it's hardcore and it's very hard for people to relate. You see what I'm saying to you? And not only that, it's very hard for me to make videos. I'm not a person who just wants to come out and be like, hey, look at me, this is who I am. That's why when I'm DJing, this whole looking at me thing, I don't like it. This whole culture of everyone staring at the DJ, I don't like it. It's like, you go over there, I'll make you happy. If something happens, yeah, you look, hey, yeah, you acknowledge, but after that, you go back and then you enjoy yourselves. This is my space here. Leave me be, and I'll project the energy onto you, but don't look at me, because I don't need adoration. That's not me. I'm very introverted. I don't like that stuff. Anyway.
And the only thing I can akin it to in my own experience, which of course is, you know, there's no comparison, but it's the only thing I can akin it to, is the feeling of playing a great concert, like amazing, like it just goes right and everybody's having a great time and you leave and everybody's cheering, and then an hour later you are sitting alone in a hotel room and your ears are ringing and nothing that you can think of will give you that feeling again or even bring you down from that feeling. And if you're not doing drugs and you're not chasing somebody you shouldn't be chasing, CNN ain't going to do it. The internet ain't going to do it. It's a hallowed feeling.